There is an incredible sense of accomplishment that comes from fixing or setting up something on your own at your house or apartment. And if you're like me and DIY is a lifelong work in progress, it's especially self-satisfying to figure out what you need to do, jump into it, and actually get it right. That desk from IKEA or the leaky faucet you figured out how to fix through YouTube are, for many of us, real accomplishments. Even the most experienced carpenters, handy people, creative types, they experience that same sense of satisfaction, although they will typically tackle much more ambitious projects than most people. Entrepreneurs and even established businesses, they experience something very similar when they create new opportunities, rolling up their sleeves and pouring all their energy and passion into a new venture or a business idea from scratch and actually seeing it succeed. Many successful business leaders are just naturally driven to put in the sweat and energy to make a venture successful, rally a team toward a common goal, and then have the patience to see it through to completion. So it's not surprising that many companies who have experienced success and want to take their businesses outside to their home shores tackle these new opportunities with equal energy and enthusiasm. In some instances, their home market is saturated and they just need to look elsewhere for growth. In other cases, a business leader is just wired in that way that requires him or her to continue to take on new challenges. Whatever the reason, companies who are moving into a new market, whether it be the USA, China, South America, or elsewhere, they usually end up assigning project leaders who are very independent, willing to work endlessly toward a goal, and are really excited about the challenges that come from a new market. The problem, however, with taking what made a company successful at home and replicating it in new markets is that the realities on the ground, different customs, laws, languages, much more, they require businesses to make adjustments. Now, I'm not talking about complete reinventions or changing company values or scrapping core competencies. Rather, it's the need to recognize that the business landscape that they are now entering is different than what they're used to back home, and that navigating this new environment requires local knowledge to be successful. Now, I have firsthand experience with launching a new venture in a new country, and it was many years ago. I was given the project to plan and start up the European headquarters from the ground up for my employer. I did the research, was really prepared, and I jumped into the project with enthusiasm. The first 6 weeks, however, were incredibly frustrating. It just seemed that everything for which I had really detailed plans, it just took much longer to complete, or in some cases even get started, than I had anticipated. Simple local customs that right now are commonplace to me, they were counter to the way I was used to doing business at that time. I had visited the country many times and I helped develop lucrative customers that justified the expansion, but that just didn't fully prepare me for setting up a business in the country. Fortunately, we made our first local hire after 6 weeks and the process really started to come together at that point. For a lot of companies, particularly from Ireland and the UK, North America is a very attractive market for growth. It is roughly the size to all of Europe. It has English as its native language and a relatively business-friendly environment. Many companies from these two countries in particular have experienced faster and larger growth across the Atlantic than on their own continent. However, not every company that targets North America is successful, and the reasons why potential sometimes is not realized are many. Rather than cover all of them, we're going to go over a few examples that are specific to the USA and highlight an underlying theme across all of them: the do-it-yourself trap. Now, DIY is great for a small project at home, that IKEA desk, the leaky faucet, but it can be disastrous and significantly more expensive if applied to areas outside of somebody's skill set. Even the most accomplished carpenter, they're going to think twice about rewiring their house. They're most likely going to call in and pay for a professional electrician who has expertise in an area understood to some extent, but really they shouldn't tackle themselves. Same logic applies to businesses, particularly when venturing into a new country. A lot of foreign companies venturing into this region often have business leaders that are fairly familiar with North America. They may have even worked in the past here on a J-1 visa. They're not treading into entirely unfamiliar waters, but they haven't operated a business as an in-country entity, or maybe they are exporting from home to a new customer in North America for the first time. They may know how to attract interested customers in the country, but lack the expertise to fulfill orders efficiently, remain compliant of all local laws and regulations, and operate profitably as an in-country corporation. Four of the most common areas that often trip up new entrants to the American market are taxes, insurance, contracts, and immigration. Let's start with taxes. The first question we are often asked, especially from European companies looking into this market for the first time, is, what is the VAT rate in America? There is understandable shock when these businesses are told that there is no VAT in the USA. There is even more shock when they are told that all 50 states, plus the District of Columbia, have their own distinct sales tax, and that it applies to some products and services, but not all, and the interpretation of how this applies varies from state to state. Unfortunately, the following example gets reincarnated too many times every year. Company A from, say, Ireland finds a customer in the USA that happens to be located in, say, Pennsylvania. Their product, fortunately, does not have any import duties. That's another talk unto itself. But the state sales tax in Pennsylvania is 6%. Their accounting firm at home applies and pays the proper sales tax as required in Pennsylvania for several orders received from this customer over the next year. Their Pennsylvania customer gives them next a $2 million order, their biggest in the USA to date, to be delivered to one of their facilities in New York State. Company A accepts the order, fulfills it, applies 6% sales tax to the invoice, and happily receives payment. What they and their accounting firm didn't realize is that sales tax for the state of New York is actually 8%. So for this particular order, that's a $40,000 shortfall in taxes collected, and a real headache to recover. The lesson here is obvious. Investing a small amount in services from an in-country accounting firm will save you headaches and downstream costs in the long run. Now let's talk about insurance. This is an area where, in many cases, a company has what appears to be a very comprehensive policy in place. They've even thought through the potential need to add language and riders at the advice of their local insurance broker to cover their business abroad. What companies often don't realize and need to rely on in-country resources for advice is that there are areas for insurance coverage that they don't have at home, but will in some cases absolutely be needed, and in other cases should at least be considered for the USA. Examples of unique insurance requirements in the USA include workers' compensation, health insurance, and a range of industry-specific coverages. Workers' compensation, also known as workers' comp, is an insurance policy that businesses must provide to their employees, and it is their primary vehicle to recover costs if they are injured at the workplace. For most industries, the costs typically are not onerous, but they need to be included in a company's planning budget. If a company does not have a workers' comp coverage, and the severity varies from state to state, they could face enormous fines if caught. Even companies who take out policies but do not properly account for the employees and contractors who are covered face stiff fines. A local insurance expert can provide the guidance that will keep a company compliant and avoid staggering fines. Now, health insurance is another uniquely American puzzle for foreign businesses. Historically, a person's employer in the USA is their primary access point for health insurance coverage. This trend has shifted in recent years, and the percentage of the insurance premiums that are typically covered by the employer have also shifted. But understanding what is legally required, what are best practices, and what options exist for both employers and employees is a challenge for domestic businesses, let alone foreign businesses entering in from another country. Benefits advisors and insurance brokers are absolutely essential for businesses to navigate the challenging waters of health insurance. Lastly, let's talk about the value of local legal advice. Local attorneys can help foreign businesses set up a corporate structure, assess potential intellectual property issues, and a range of other service areas for which they often understand the value of informed legal advice. Two areas, however, where we have seen foreign businesses not seek local legal advice up front, and it has cost them a lot in the long run, are contracts and immigration. Too often, companies take a standard sales agency or distributor agreement from home and assume it will be acceptable in their new country. Aside from causing confusion with their potential sales channel partners, this approach sometimes leaves the company exposed unnecessarily to potential lawsuits and/or provides protections beyond what is typically offered in the USA. Another example is work contracts. While these are commonplace in many foreign countries, they are not always required or even expected in different states throughout America. Companies need to make sure that any time they enter into a contract in the USA, whether of their origin or provided by a customer or business partner, that it has been reviewed by attorneys in the USA. These attorneys can provide informed local guidance that is not only legally sound, but also conforms with the norms of standard business practices in the USA. Immigration is another area where too often businesses rely on what has worked in the past rather than maintain proper guidance from an established immigration attorney in the USA. Immigration attorneys are invaluable partners for foreign businesses who will have employees from their home country visiting and/or working in the USA. Many businesses have had situations where a valuable employee from home is unable to enter the country in support of a contract or project at a critical moment in its life cycle. Now, had they consulted with an immigration attorney up front, they would have avoided the headaches and added costs that come from scrambling at the 11th hour to try to get a needed employee on site in the USA for a valuable project. In each of these areas, taxation, insurance, legal, businesses who try to make decisions on their own, often for the sake of expediency or cost savings, end up costing themselves time and money in the long run. The importance of having retained local guidance available throughout a business's expansion into a new country is absolutely invaluable. Seeking out this guidance before investing time and resources into a new venture is absolutely critical. Most service providers in the USA are happy to spend time before they are on the clock to provide some general direction, hopeful that the business isn't so short-sighted that they take a bit of free advice and then try to implement it on their own. Businesses need to make sure that their new ventures plans are sustainable, with infrastructure built by and supported by local experts who will help them avoid downstream complications that are costly and erode customer confidence.